In a world built on polished speeches and closed doors, a 7-year-old janitor's son disrupts Harvard's most prestigious debate with nothing but a laugh, and sets off a chain of events that will challenge power, reshape perception, and redefine belonging. The final point is a gripping, character-driven journey of resilience, voice, and transformation, following a boy born into silence who dares to speak, again and again, until the world has no choice but to listen. If you like the video and subscribe to the channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. The brass letters on the marble plaque read, Harvard Debate Hall, though to Logan Pierce, it might as well have been a bank vault. Off limits. Towering. He stood just outside the tall oak doors, half hidden behind the faded cleaning cart, his small hands gripping a roll of paper towels like a knight clutches a sword. Inside, the hall hummed with tension. Elite students in starched suits prepped their final arguments. Professors adjusted their glasses. Judges scribbled notes. And cameras, from 3 national news outlets, rolled silently. The air smelled like varnish and ego. At 7, Logan was invisible to them. Just the janitor's son, tagging along after school. No one noticed when he followed his father, Ron, inside. No one noticed when he slipped away behind the velvet curtains lining the wall. He crouched beside the podium's control panel, curious, small, and silent. Until he wasn't. Earlier that day, Logan had overheard them. The debaters. Arguing about ethics, law, and justice. They talked like superheroes, except their words were so long and twisted, they made Logan feel stupid just hearing them. That changed when one of them, Grant Kendall III, laughed about Ron. Imagine cleaning floors your whole life, Grant had said to the ripple of chuckles. Then dragging your kid around like there's a legacy in bleach and mop water. Logan remembered his dad's hands, scarred, dry, reliable. He remembered the lunch Ron had split with him an hour earlier, sitting on a bench outside, sharing an old thermos of soup. Ron didn't say much, but he smiled when Logan did. Now, from the shadow behind the podium, Logan saw Grant step forward in his blazer. The room hushed. Grant's voice curled like smoke, confident, slow, full of Harvard. We stand today not just to win this argument, but to defend the moral fabric of American jurisprudence. Logan reached for the mic switch. He didn't know why. Maybe to ruin Grant's moment. Maybe to just be heard for once. But instead of words, he laughed. Clear. Unmistakably young. It rippled across the mic like a siren across water. Everyone froze. Logan couldn't stop. It wasn't a mean laugh, it was real. Right. It cut through the waxy formality like a cracked window letting in air. Cameras turned. Heads turned. Grant turned. And Logan, still crouched, peeked up from behind the podium like a curious animal. Red hoodie, mop of brown hair, cheeks flushed. His voice still echoed, bouncing off ancient stone and Harvard pride. A full 3 seconds of stunned silence followed. Then someone shouted, "Hey! Who is that kid?" Ron bolted from the aisle. Logan. Logan stood now, blinking in the spotlight. "I'm sorry," Ron said to the judges, to the audience. He reached for Logan's hand. He didn't mean to, but Logan pulled away. "He did," he said clearly. "I did." Grant scoffed. "What, are we letting children weigh in now?" Logan looked straight at him. "You talk like justice is only for smart people." The room inhaled. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" One of the judges leaned forward. "Let him speak." Ron tensed, but the panel nodded. One of the moderators, Professor Levin, known for her stone-serious demeanor, gestured toward the mic. "Go on, young man. You have the floor." Logan stepped up. His voice shook a little, but it carried. "You said justice is what's legal. But my dad says it's what's right. Like telling the truth. Or sticking up for people who don't get invited to places like this." He looked at Grant again. "You laughed at my dad. But he fixes the toilets you're too important to notice. He works when no one's looking. That's justice too." The room had changed. Phones stopped filming. I stopped darting. Even the air stopped moving. Professor Levin whispered, "What's your name?" "Logan," he said. "Logan Pierce." She nodded, then turned to the panel. "I move we pause the debate." Grant snapped, "That's absurd." But no one agreed. Because the janitor's son had just said something none of them could argue with. Not with all their case law and citations. Not even with their degrees. Ron stood beside Logan now, unsure whether to scold or hold him. He settled on neither. Just rested a hand on his son's shoulder, eyes wet. In the far back, the oldest judge, a retired circuit court justice, cleared his throat. I've heard hundreds of debates, he said. Thousands of words. But sometimes it's not the argument that wins the room. It's the truth. Logan didn't smile. He just looked up at his dad and whispered, "Did I mess up?" Ron shook his head slowly. "No, son. You just started something." The news clip played on loop, online, on phones, on TVs perched in dentist offices and gym corners. "You said justice is what's legal," the boy's voice rang out. "But my dad says it's what's right." 7 million views in 3 days. By the time Logan returned to Boston Public Elementary on Monday, the world had already decided who he was. But his classmates hadn't. At first, they stared like he had grown antlers. A few teachers smiled too wide. "There's our little hero," one chirped, as if Logan had saved a cat from a tree, not upended a room full of future senators. He wanted to crawl inside his locker. At recess, Darnell from the 4th grade stepped up beside him. "You really said all that?" Logan shrugged. "Yeah. You famous now? I guess. You gonna be on Ellen, or something?" "I dunno." Darnell squinted. "That white kid from Channel 5 called you the janitor's boy." "I am." "Yeah," Darnell muttered, quieter now. "But you don't gotta be just that." Logan didn't know what to say to that. He didn't even know what he was anymore. Back at Harvard, the hall was quieter than usual. The story had embarrassed them. No one said so out loud, but Logan could feel it in the sideways glances when he returned with his dad to help clean on Wednesday evening. Students who used to ignore him now watched him like he might grab another mic at any moment. Worse were the professors. Professor Levin passed him in the corridor with a polite nod, but not a word. Another faculty member, pale, thin, with a trimmed gray beard, muttered to Ron, "Maybe don't bring him again. Just for a while." Ron didn't argue. He just nodded. Understood. That night, as they rode the T home, Logan said nothing. His dad didn't press. The train rattled and howled through tunnels. Finally, Logan asked, "Did I make them mad?" Ron looked up from his work boots, his voice even. "You made them uncomfortable." Logan leaned against the window. "But I didn't lie." "No, you didn't. But they don't like me now." Ron looked at his son, saw a quiet storm behind his eyes. "They didn't like you before. They just didn't notice you. That's different." Outside, the city sped past in neon streaks. Logan watched the buildings blur and said nothing else. At home, the living room buzzed with the sound of a borrowed laptop. A local college student named Kayla, one of Ron's tenants upstairs, had insisted Logan needed to see something. "It's a podcast," she said, tapping her trackpad. "They're talking about you." The voice on the recording was smooth and practiced. A boy, black, poor, uninvited, walks into the most privileged room in the country and steals the conversation. Not with credentials. Not with a resume. Just with truth. Logan tilted his head. "They think I stole something?" "It's a metaphor," Kayla smiled. "Means you took power." He didn't feel powerful. But then she handed him a piece of paper. Fan mail. "Dear Logan, my mom cried when she heard what you said. My dad said you're braver than half of Congress. You made me want to speak up too. Even if no one's listening yet." Kayla nodded. "See? You lit something." But school didn't feel lit. It felt lonelier. The next week, his teacher assigned a mock debate project. The groups were already picked. Logan wasn't in any of them. "They must have forgotten," she said too quickly when he raised his hand. But he hadn't forgotten how Grant's face twisted when he spoke. How adults whispered after. When the bell rang, Logan stayed in his seat. He looked at the floor, then at the window. Then he raised his hand again. "Can I go solo?" The teacher blinked. "What?" "I don't need a group." She hesitated, then sighed. "All right. You'll present last." That night, Logan worked alone. No note cards. No partners. Just a pencil, his dad's old dictionary, and a growing sense of something solid inside him. He wasn't sure what he was building, but it felt like something worth saying. Again. By the 3rd week, the air around Logan had changed. At school, some kids started calling him Harvard boy, not with respect but with that sharp edge kids use when they don't understand something and it scares them. One of the 6th graders shoved his backpack off the lunch table. Another mimicked his voice in the hallway. Even his teacher, Mrs. Callahan, had cooled. She stopped calling on him unless she had to. At Harvard, Ron worked quieter shifts. He left Logan at home more often. "They just need time," Ron told him one evening as they folded laundry. "Places like that, they don't bend easy." "But I didn't break anything," Logan muttered. Sometimes just being seen feels like a break to them. One cold Thursday, Logan returned to Harvard with Ron for the first time in over a week. The debate hall was empty, but Logan didn't go inside. He wandered instead, down long corridors, past portraits of dead men with heavy frames, through a library older than his grandmother. He found a quiet reading room. One student sat near the window, a girl maybe 19 with almond skin and thick braids pulled into a crown. She was reading Baldwin. Logan hovered at the door. She glanced up. "You the kid from the debate thing?" He hesitated. "Yeah." "You scared the hell out of Kendall." "Good." She closed her book and patted the seat next to her. "I'm Nadia." Logan sat. She studied him for a moment. "You think that was your 15 minutes? Logan didn't know what that meant. "I mean," she clarified, "are you done? Or was that just your first page?" "I don't know," Logan said. "You read?" "Sometimes." She reached into her bag and handed him a slim, worn paperback. "The fire next time. Read this. Then decide." At school the next week, the mock debate began. Logan sat alone at the front of the classroom, notebook in hand. His voice trembled at first, then steadied. His topic: who gets to speak? He didn't mention Harvard. He didn't mention his dad. But he did talk about being small, black, ignored. About how speaking doesn't mean you're heard. And how being right doesn't mean you're safe. When he finished, there was no applause. Just silence. But Mrs. Callahan looked up from her desk and gave the smallest of nods. That night Ron made spaghetti. Logan read beside the stove, Baldwin in his lap, eyes wide. He didn't understand every sentence, but he felt every one. "You ever go to college?" he asked. Ron paused, sauce-stained spoon in hand. "One semester. Then your granddad got sick. I took over cleaning." Logan looked up. "I think I want to go." Ron smiled, soft and slow. "Then you will." Outside, the city lights flickered like faraway stars. Logan pressed his hand to the cold glass of the window and whispered to his reflection, "They're not done with me." And somewhere deep inside he began to believe it. The weather turned in April. Gray skies folded over Boston like heavy sheets, and rain collected in the gutters outside Logan's apartment building, reflecting red brake lights and the occasional siren wail. At school, Logan barely spoke anymore. He didn't raise his hand. Didn't join recess. Didn't push back when Marcus accidentally bumped him in the hallway. The teachers had moved on. So had the press. The moment was over. Except it wasn't. Not for Logan. It still echoed in his ribs like a bell struck too hard. Evenings were quiet at home. Ron worked 2 shifts now. He left at 5 a.m. and came back after dark, smelling of disinfectant and metal. Logan spent more time with books. Baldwin, then Hughes, then Morrison. Titles passed down one at a time by Nadia, the Harvard student who'd taken to meeting him once a week in that same quiet reading room. "You ever think about running for office?" she joked once. Logan looked at her like she'd asked if he wanted to fly. "I'm serious," she said, grinning. "You have presence. I have a mop. You have a voice." Logan shrugged. "I'm just a janitor's kid." She leaned forward. "Yeah. So was James Baldwin's father. So was Malcolm's." He didn't answer. But he remembered. That spring, Logan's school held its annual Future Leaders of Boston event, a 3-day seminar where students from across the district presented projects and debated community issues. Logan submitted a paper under a pseudonym, L.P. Carter. The topic was simple: the cost of being heard. He didn't tell anyone it was his. He didn't want a stage this time. He just wanted to test the words. 3 days later, his paper made the final round. It would be read aloud by a volunteer. On the last day of the event, Logan sat in the back row of the auditorium, hands in his lap, heart racing. A girl from another school stepped onto the stage with the paper in her hand and began to read. There's a difference between being loud and being listened to. You can shout truth into a room and still be erased, if the room was never built for you in the first place. Heads in the audience turned. Murmurs started. One teacher leaned into another, whispering, "This is that Harvard kid, isn't it?" Logan kept his eyes down. Justice doesn't live in microphones. It lives in what happens after. When the cameras are off. When you walk back into the room and people no longer clap, but still remember what you did. When the reading ended, a few people clapped. But most didn't know how to respond. Afterward, Logan slipped out the side door before anyone could find him. He didn't need credit. The words had made it. That was enough. 2 weeks later, Logan was pulled aside by the school counselor, Mrs. Alvarez. She was kind, but her voice carried that careful edge adults use when they're trying not to say the wrong thing. I wanted to check in, Logan. How have things been since the incident? He tilted his head. You mean the debate? She nodded. Yes, since then. Your teachers mentioned you've been quieter. I've been reading. That's good. Anything you want to talk about? He looked at the bookshelf behind her desk. Emotional literacy for kids. Navigating identity. You matter? In rainbow letters. No. She smiled too quickly. Okay. But my door's always open. He nodded and walked out. Later that afternoon, Logan was alone in the classroom during lunch, by choice. The rain tapped softly at the windows. He liked that sound. It made the world seem further away. Then the door opened. It was Mrs. Callahan. She held a folder in her hand. Hey, she said. Logan didn't answer. I read your paper. The one from the leaders' event. Logan looked up sharply. How did you know it was me? She smiled faintly. The voice was familiar. He said nothing. She walked over, pulled a chair up beside him. You scared people, you know, she said gently. I didn't mean to. I know. But that's how change starts. With someone who doesn't mean to. He looked at her carefully. Do you think I was wrong? No. I think you were honest. That meant more than he expected it to. She handed him the folder. Inside was a brochure, the Boston Youth Ethics Program. Summer classes. Writing. Speech. Scholarships. You should apply, she said. You'll have to write an essay. He cracked a smile. I think I can handle that. That night, Logan worked late on the application. Ron came home just after 10, tired, soaked from a burst pipe in one of the university labs. Logan stood at the table, holding the essay. You want to read it? He asked. Ron wiped his hands and took the paper. He read it slowly. Then again. When he looked up, his eyes were full. You wrote this? He asked. Logan nodded. You said everything I ever wanted to say. Logan swallowed. Does that mean I can say more? Ron leaned down and kissed the top of his head. Son, you were born to. Weeks passed. The silence from others remained. Some kids still teased. Some still avoided him. But Logan had learned something. The weight of silence wasn't always a punishment. Sometimes it was space. Space to grow. To read. To write. To think. To plan. He wasn't waiting to be invited anymore. He was building his own table. One sentence at a time. The envelope came on a Wednesday, thick and cream-colored, with a maroon seal pressed into the corner. Ron held it like it might vanish if he moved too fast. His hands, those same scarred, capable hands that had polished Harvard's floors for 20 years, trembled as he passed it to Logan across the breakfast table. For a long moment, Logan just stared at it. He was 18 now, taller than Ron by a few inches, still lean, but his shoulders had filled out. The hoodie was gone. Today he wore a pressed black shirt and dark jeans. Clean lines. Ready for whatever the letter said. He peeled the envelope open slowly. Inside, a single sheet. Letterhead. Heavy paper. Black serif type. His eyes found the words he'd been chasing since that day he laughed into a microphone at 7 years old. Dear Logan Pierce. Congratulations. It is with great pleasure that we welcome you to Harvard University. He didn't hear the rest. Just saw his father's eyes well up with pride. And he let the paper fall onto the table, mouth open in stunned silence. Ron reached across and gripped his hand. You made it, he whispered. But Logan shook his head, still in a daze. No. We did. Move-in day felt surreal. The gates of Harvard Yard loomed large, the same ones he used to walk past as a child, holding Ron's hand, unnoticed by the students streaming through. Now he was one of them. He had a dorm key, a schedule, a future. His room was small, shared with a roommate named Felix, a jazz-loving kid from San Diego who wore wire-rimmed glasses and played trumpet like it kept him breathing. Logan unpacked slowly, setting a single framed photo on his desk. Him and Ron back when Logan was still small, both smiling wide in front of a janitor's cart. The image was sun-faded, but the moment glowed in memory. "You nervous?" Felix asked, plucking at a loose guitar string on his bed. Logan shrugged. "I've been here before." "You toured?" "Sort of." He didn't explain. It never came out right. Classes began in a blur: political theory, ethics, African American literature, public speaking. Each room smelled like paper and ambition. Professors talked fast, students faster. The hallways buzzed with competition masked as conversation. And Logan listened. He didn't speak up much that first month. He took notes, ravenous, meticulous notes, and sat near the back watching the way people moved when they thought they belonged. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. "Isn't that the janitor's kid?" "Yeah. The debate thing." "He's still here?" Someone in a study group once joked, "You gonna sweep the room when we're done, Logan?" Laughter. Not unkind but sharp enough. Logan didn't respond. He had work to do. One night in late September, Logan found himself walking past the debate hall again. Looked the same. Maybe a little smaller. The heavy oak doors stood ajar. Inside, a student team was practicing. Logan lingered in the shadows, leaning against the cold stone wall. He recognized one of the speakers, Grant Kendall III. Older now. Senior year. Still clean-shaven, still in tailored suits. Still talking like justice belonged in a vault. Logan smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. He didn't envy Grant anymore. He pitied him. Back at his dorm, Logan sat at his desk, rereading an assignment for his literature class. Trace a moment of personal transformation through language. Be specific. Be brave. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he began to type. "I was 7 when I interrupted a debate at Harvard. I laughed. Not because I thought it was funny, but because something inside me cracked open. Something that had been waiting to speak. They didn't see me before that. Afterward they couldn't forget me." The words came quickly without fear. A dam breaking. He wrote about Ron. About growing up quiet. About being seen only when he made others uncomfortable. About how speaking truth didn't always win you applause, but it made space. Space for others. Space to keep going. He ended the essay with a single line. "I'm not here because I belong. I'm here because I wouldn't leave." By October, Logan started speaking more in class. Not often. But when he did, people listened. He didn't posture. Didn't raise his hand unless he had something real to say. But when he did, the room slowed. Even the professors noticed. Dr. Mahoney, his public policy instructor, pulled him aside after class. "You ever think about law?" she asked. Logan raised an eyebrow. "Me?" "You've got precision," she said. "You don't waste breath." He thought about that on the way back to his dorm. Thought about it while passing the janitorial closet on the 3rd floor of Elliott Hall. The one he used to watch Ron disappear into with a mop and bucket. He opened it now and just stood there for a moment. The air still smelled like bleach and lemon oil. He closed the door and walked on. One Sunday evening he called Ron. They didn't talk often. Ron didn't like cell phones much, said they made people too reachable, but Logan needed to hear his voice. "Hey Pop. You eat today?" "Twice." "That's better." They sat in silence for a few seconds. It was the good kind. Then Logan asked, "Did you ever think I'd get here?" Ron chuckled. "Son, I didn't dream that far ahead. I just wanted you to believe you could." "I do now," Logan said. Ron exhaled. "Good. Don't let them take that from you." "I won't." A few weeks later, Logan attended his first student forum on equity and admissions. He didn't plan to speak. But someone brought up legacy students and how resources were distributed. Someone else joked that hard work always rises. And Logan stood. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't point fingers. He just said, "It's not about rising. It's about where you're allowed to start." And the room listened. Again. By sophomore year, Logan Pierce was no longer anonymous. He'd earned a research position under Professor Mahoney, contributed a blistering op-ed in the Harvard Crimson about the ethics of legacy admissions, and been nominated for a campus award in public leadership. He was still the janitor's son. Still black. Still different. But now they couldn't look away. Not that they didn't try. One cold November morning, Logan arrived at class early. His breath hung in the air like fog as he pushed through the doors of Fenton Hall. Inside, the lecture hall was mostly empty, except for two students in the far corner whispering over coffee. "He's just performative," one said. The other nodded. "Yeah, like he weaponizes his background." Logan paused. He wasn't angry. Not really. Just tired. He took his seat in the front row, opened his notebook and stared at the blank page. That same week, the Student Debate Council met to vote on the topic for the annual Winter Symposium. Logan, now a senior member, submitted his proposal, Justice and Access. Who gets to decide what's fair? It didn't pass. Instead, they picked, should America lower the voting age? Safe, abstract, polished. After the vote, Logan confronted Camille, another senior council member who had once applauded him after a guest panel. "Why not mine?" She didn't look up from her tablet. "We just thought it was a little too close to home. Too personal." "It's supposed to be." Camille shrugged. "People are tired, Logan. They want a break." He almost laughed. A break from what? Reality? But she was already walking away. That night, Logan went to the gym to run it off. Miles of it. He didn't sleep. Not really. By 3 a.m., he was still awake, staring at his ceiling, the essay deadline for Professor Mahoney's class blinking on his calendar. He opened his laptop and started typing. "I'm tired of asking to exist in your spaces. I'm tired of proving I belong here while carrying the proof on my skin, my name, my silence. If I'm a symbol, it's because you made me one." He paused, then deleted the entire thing. Too angry. Too raw. Not helpful. Not Harvard. He hated how fast that voice, the editing voice, had become second nature. The next day, Logan met up with Julian, his closest friend on campus. They'd met in a summer ethics program before freshman year, both wide-eyed and skeptical. Julian was white, from Vermont, quiet and kind. They'd bonded over Baldwin and basketball. Logan trusted him. Mostly. They sat on the steps outside Widener Library, sharing a sandwich and watching tourists take photos of buildings they didn't know the names of. "Something's off," Julian said. Logan raised an eyebrow. "With me?" "Yeah. You're here but not here." Logan hesitated. "They shut down my topic for symposium. Called it too personal." Julian winced. "That's crap." "Yeah," Logan said. "But I let it go." Julian said nothing. Logan looked at him. "You ever feel like you're being tolerated instead of welcomed?" Julian's silence stretched too long. Logan stood. "Never mind." Midterms hit hard that semester. Logan was juggling 3 research projects, 1 job in the admissions office, and tutoring 2 high school students from Roxbury. He barely slept. His grades dipped for the first time. Then the breach happened. His essay, one of his private journal entries not meant for submission, was leaked online. The one he'd deleted. Except it hadn't been deleted. Just left in a shared folder during a collaborative writing session for a leadership seminar. Now it was posted on a conservative blog under the headline, entitled "Harvard Student Rants Against White Classmates, Whines About Existing." The comments were vicious. "Another ungrateful DI poster boy. Send him back to janitor school. You're here because we let you in." By morning, his inbox was full of anonymous threats. His campus mailbox was vandalized. One of his high school mates texted him, "Are you okay? We saw the thing online." Logan didn't respond. Julian texted too. "Julian, I swear I didn't mean for that to get out. I thought it was part of the shared doc. I didn't realize it was private. I'm so sorry." Logan stared at the screen. He didn't reply. Not for a week. By the time he saw Julian again, the damage was done. They met on the edge of Harvard Yard, beneath a half-dead tree with yellow leaves curling like fists. "You could have asked," Logan said. Julian's voice cracked. "I didn't know it was yours." "You read it?" Julian nodded. "Yeah. And I thought, maybe it needed to be read. By strangers? Without context. I was trying to help." "No," Logan said quietly. "You were trying to use it." Julian flinched. "You think I'm like the rest of them?" Logan didn't answer. The fallout took weeks to settle. Mahoney defended him publicly. So did Nadia, who'd returned to campus as a graduate TA and offered to connect Logan with legal help if needed. The university issued a soft, calculated statement. "We value the diverse voices of our community and encourage robust dialogue." But nothing changed. Logan walked into rooms and felt every glance like a weight. He thought about leaving, transferring, disappearing. Then one night in late winter he walked into the janitorial closet of Elliott Hall. The same closet his father had once worked out of. He sat on an overturned bucket and just breathed. He remembered something his father had once told him: "They'll try to make you ashamed of where you came from. Don't let them. That's where your strength lives." He stood up, walked out, and didn't look back. A week later Logan returned to class. Head high, shoulders squared. He turned in a new essay. It opened with a single sentence: "I will not apologize for surviving in your house with my name intact." The professor gave it an A. Snow fell gently on the red brick of Harvard Yard, softening the sharp corners and dusting the branches like powdered sugar. Logan walked with his collar up, scarf loose, coat unbuttoned. He liked the cold. It woke him up, kept his nerves sharp. He was 20 now, junior year. A little broader now, his face sharper. His eyes, still dark and curious, held something steadier. Not anger, not even defiance, just control. Like someone who had already walked through fire and knew how to carry heat without getting burned. That morning, Logan had received an unexpected email. Subject: Harvard 175th Anniversary Panel Invitation. Body: Mr. Pierce, we would like to formally invite you to join the keynote panel for Harvard's 175th Anniversary Series. Your voice and story represent a vital thread in the modern narrative of this institution. The panel will center around the question: who gets to define the future? We hope you'll accept. He read it twice, then again. The location? Harvard Debate Hall. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he closed his laptop and walked to Elliott Hall. To the third floor. To the janitor's closet that now bore a gold nameplate. In honor of Ronald Pierce, steward of the yard, father of legacy. Logan had petitioned for it after Ron's retirement last spring. It had taken months, letters, alumni calls. But it had worked. He stood there for a minute, fingers grazing the plaque. Then he pulled out his phone and called home. Ron answered on the second ring. "Hey, Pop. You okay?" "Yeah," Logan said. "They invited me back. To speak." Ron didn't say anything at first. Then, "That same room. Same one. Will you?" "I don't know yet." "Well," Ron said, clearing his throat, "don't do it for them." "I won't. Do it if there's something still worth saying." Later that night, Logan sat at his desk, staring at a blank Word document. He had given speeches before, panels, guest lectures, even a TEDx talk. But this one felt different. It wasn't about being impressive. It was about being true. He pulled out the first notebook he'd ever filled, the one from his teenage years. The one with pages stained by time and stress. The one he used to carry in his backpack back when people thought he didn't belong. On the first page, in his 7-year-old handwriting, he had once written, "They only hear you when you make noise." He underlined it now. Then opened a new document. Over the next few days he wrote in fragments. Memories, phrases, pieces of himself. Being seen is not the same as being known. You asked me to speak, then asked me not to be too loud. I learned to breathe quietly. Then I learned to stop apologizing for breathing at all. He rewrote, erased, rewrote again. It wasn't a speech yet. It was still a wound. But something was forming. The day of the panel arrived fast. Snow had melted into icy slush. Students in long coats shuffled between buildings. Logan walked calmly through the yard, hands in his pockets, no notes in hand. Inside the debate hall, rows of chairs were already filled, faculty, alumni, students, cameras. On stage sat 3 panelists, a renowned judge, a corporate philanthropist, and Logan. He didn't speak first. Or second. He listened. The philanthropist spoke of innovation. The judge spoke of tradition. Then the moderator turned to Logan. "You've been a voice on this campus since you were a child. How would you answer the question, who gets to define the future?" He didn't touch the mic at first. He looked at the crowd. Some familiar faces. Some new. Then he said, "I used to think the mic was the point, that being heard was the prize." He paused. "But it's not. Not really." He let that hang. "I laughed into this mic when I was 7. Not because I had a plan, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Because something in me knew, before I had words, that justice and truth don't always come dressed in suits or citations. He looked out again. I've spent the years since then being asked to tone it down, to make it easier, softer, safer. A few heads nodded. But here's the thing. The future doesn't get defined by who's safest. It gets defined by who refuses to leave. More nods now. Phones came up. Recordings began. I'm the son of a janitor. I walked these halls long before anyone here thought I belonged. And I stayed. Not because it was comfortable. Not because it was fair. But because leaving would have meant agreeing. He took a breath. And I don't agree. Applause began to build, hesitant then certain. The future gets defined by the people who show up even when the door's half closed. Even when the room doesn't clap. Even when their voice shakes. Now he touched the mic. Just lightly. And sometimes it takes a laugh. A disruption. A reminder that truth doesn't have to come dressed up to matter. He stepped back. And I'm not here to be a symbol. Or a mascot. I'm here to finish the sentence I started 13 years ago. He smiled, small, quiet, grounded. And I'm not done yet. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was real. The kind that ripples up your spine and makes people stand before they think about it. Logan didn't stay long after. He shook hands. Thanked the panel. Nodded to a few professors. Then he walked out into the cold again. The sky above the yard was clear. Stars peeking through the city haze. His phone buzzed. A text from Nadia. You made them feel it. He typed back. That was the point. In his dorm that night, Logan pulled the old notebook from his drawer. On the last page in new ink he wrote, When I speak now it's not for permission. It's for permanence. And beneath that, next, finish the point. It had been 6 months since the panel. Spring touched Cambridge with hesitant fingers, brushing trees with green and pushing crocuses up through the last crusts of snow. Logan stood at the edge of Harvard Yard, alone. A red brick fortress of legacy behind him. His cap and gown hung untouched in his dorm. Commencement was in 3 days. But right now he wasn't thinking about diplomas. He was thinking about mop water. He was thinking about the sound of Ron's boots echoing in the marble corridor, the clatter of a cart, the sting of bleach in his nose. He was thinking about the first time he stood behind a mic and laughed, loud, full, unafraid. And he was thinking about a message that had landed in his inbox 2 weeks ago. Subject: Visit request from Boston Public Elementary. Body: Dear Mr. Pierce, I teach 4th grade at Boston Public Elementary. My students recently watched your 175th anniversary panel and have been asking a lot of questions about truth, voice, and justice. One of them, Tariq, has been having a tough year. He reminds me of someone. If you have time to visit, I think it could mean the world. Sincerely, Mrs. Callahan. The same teacher. All these years later. Logan had replied the same day. Now he walked through the halls of his old school, walls still scuffed, linoleum dull, the air buzzing with chatter and squeaking sneakers. He stopped outside room 14 and adjusted his collar. Inside, 22 4th graders sat cross-legged on a rug, eyes wide, waiting. Mrs. Callahan stood to the side, older now, silver in her hair but same sharp eyes. Logan smiled. Hey. Hi, a few kids echoed. He stepped in and sat on the rug with them. No podium. No mic. Just floor. I used to go here, he said. Right in this room, actually. I used to sit where you're sitting. A murmur of awe rippled through them. I want to tell you a story, he continued. About a day I messed up. Or thought I did. And he told it, not polished, not rehearsed. He told them about the debate. About how he laughed when he wasn't supposed to. How the room went silent. How that silence wasn't scary, it was powerful. Sometimes, he said, you have to break the rules that keep you invisible. He saw one boy sitting apart from the others. Dark hoodie. Knees pulled to his chest. Logan turned toward him gently. You Tariq? The boy nodded slowly. You want to come sit up here? Tariq hesitated. Then crawled forward, not looking up. You've been having a rough year, huh? Another nod. You want to say anything? No. Okay. They sat in silence a beat. Then Logan whispered, I used to sit alone too. Tariq finally looked at him. You don't anymore? Not usually, Logan smiled. But sometimes. Some days it still feels like I don't belong. The class quieted. The air shifted. But I learned something important, Logan said louder now. Belonging isn't about who invites you in. It's about who can't ignore you once you speak. He stood slowly. Then turned to Mrs. Callahan. Do you still have that old mic? She laughed softly. Believe it or not, we do. She rummaged through a cabinet and pulled out a battered wireless microphone. Logan took it, ran his fingers over the plastic, scratched and worn. He crouched beside Tarek and handed it to him. You don't have to use it today, Logan said. But hold on to it. Just until you're ready. Tarek stared at the mic like it might bite him. Then clutched it tight. Logan ruffled his hair. Someday you'll make the room stop too. Outside, Logan lingered in the schoolyard. Sunlight dappled through chain-link shadows. A bell rang faintly from somewhere in the building. He called Ron. You do the thing? Ron asked. I did. How was it? Felt right. There was a pause. Then Ron said, I'm proud of you. I know. And you proud of yourself? Logan looked up at the blue sky. Yes, he said. I finally am. 3 days later, Logan stood on the commencement stage. Gown pressed. Shoes shined. His name read aloud. He didn't trip. Didn't freeze. He just walked forward, took his diploma from the dean of students and held it in both hands. There was a standing ovation. Not because of what he said, but because of who he'd become. Afterward, in the chaos of hugs and handshakes, Logan ducked behind the stage, into the quiet shade of an oak tree. A reporter from the university paper caught up to him. Mr. Pierce, she said breathless. Before you go, can I ask one thing? Sure. What's the last thing you want people to remember about you at Harvard? Logan thought for a long time. Then he said, that the janitor's son got the last word. And he walked away, head high, shoulders light, the final point made. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.